This is Movies on TV Podcast Industries, and we're here talking about Black Widow, starring Scarlett Johansson.
Don't.
Don't what?
You're going to give me some big hero speech. I can feel it.
Speeches aren't really my thing.
Oh.
It was more like an invitation.
To go to the Red Room and kill Dreykov?
Yeah.
Even though the Red Room is impossible to find and Dreykov is too slippery to kill?
Yeah.
That sounds like a shitload of work.
Yep. Could be fun, though.
Yep.
Welcome back to the MCU, fellow defenders. We're here on TV Podcast Industries talking about Black Widow, the 24th MCU movie. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow defenders. I am one of your other hosts, John, and I'm not made of jets.
Da, he not me the jets. I am Chris. No. Hello, I'm Chris. Doing the purveyor of the worst accents on TV Podcast Industries, which will not change throughout this course of this podcast, because there's some accents.
There are. In fact, I don't think you would have, even on your worst day, I don't think you would have done as bad a job as one of the actors, I'd say, in Black Widow and their Russian accent.
Oi, penny and herbs, mate. Don't know what you mean. Oh, I'm Russian.
That's Russian, isn't it?
Yeah.
At this stage, any accent could be Russian.
It could be. But excellent to return to the cinema to see an MCU movie. Finally, the release of Black Widow, which has been talked about since the early days of the original Avengers movie. Scarlett Johansson was supposed to be getting her spin-off movie around then. The movie itself landing around the time of Civil War, so 2016 roughly, would have fit really well in there if we'd been able to come out of that cinema 4 or 5 months later, going in, watching this movie and then continuing on with the rest of the MCU. I think it would have worked really, really well there. Unfortunately, it took a little longer to get produced and get out there than was originally planned. And then, unfortunately, the new Big C hit and took it out of the cinema for an additional year longer than was expected. I think this was originally supposed to release either towards the end of 2019 or into 2020, and now it's been a year and a half delayed since its original release, which has had some knock-on impacts on where it lands and the connections that it was trying to make into the movies and TV shows. But we will go into full spoiler-filled detail and our discussions about how the movie worked overall. Hopefully you've watched the movie. It is available on Disney Plus right now, so if you haven't watched it, you can sit down in front of your TV and press a button and watch it there.
And that's what I did.
There you go. Yes.
My lovely other hosts managed to get to the cinema. I did not. I could not. And I was like, this is perfect.
Yeah.
I have an amazing screen set up at home. Mm-hmm. I can just stream it at home. And this is one of the biggest pluses of Disney Plus, which I wish they would keep up, but as of right now, they're not. Which is like day and date. I'm like, I will still go see plenty of other films in the cinema when I can, but for those times that I can't, and I still want to enjoy it and not get spoiled too much on the internet.
Yeah.
This is an amazing option, which unfortunately looks like this is the end of it.
But is it as amazing as going to the cinema and watching it in IMAX?
I can pause it when I need to go to the toilet.
Well, that is true.
Yeah, I could watch it in my underwear. Could you do that in the cinema?
Definitely get thrown out for that.
Yeah, that's true. Although potentially people would show up in their pajamas, depending on where the cinema is located, of course. But
we did used to live across the road from the cinema, and it was really tempting just to go to the big television down the road when we had our pass to get in.
That is true. That is true.
But I will say, yeah, absolutely loved the experience of IMAX. The sound, the screen is just so encompassing, and the great thing about cinema is you don't touch your phone because you turn your phone off. Of course, if you're any type of good cinema goer, you turn your phone off, so you do not touch your phone for the entire time. So you're much more focused on the film, I feel, which I think always adds to the experience of watching a movie for the first time. The one thing I could have done without is the 20 minutes of "Welcome Back to the Cinema" advertising
it was like
that we had. 'Cause I was kind of like, we're here already. We've paid for our tickets. Put the movie on.
Yeah, those adverts need to be on TV.
Exactly.
But it was like, I mean, I get the sentiment, and it was actually really nice and very COVID safe.
Yeah.
I was double masked and radished in preparation for this, so it was like, you know, it was all really well done, actually. I mean, it's actually more that the cinema has become very, very automated. I mean, there was no kiosks now. It was all sort of just panels to print off your tickets or to buy them there.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, it's
They still have
really...
the band concession stand, of course, and people helping get you seats are still there, but yeah.
But I mean, I think the cinema we went to, it was lucky that it is refurbed during its closure and so on. So it's the IMAX cinema totally updated, new seats and so on. And the last time we went in there, towards the end of the movie, we noticed there was a waterfall forming, coming from the roof. So they've managed to plug the hole in the roof as well. And so, yes, that felt a little Waterworld, like, we're about to go into some kind of, Kevin Costner dystopia.
That was 2 weeks before the original lockdown, so they've obviously had an opportunity to at least plug the hole, which is pretty good.
And update the entire cinema.
Yeah.
So it was really, really good. Probably in desperate need if you've got a hole in the cinema. I guess it's those things, isn't it? It's that cinemas are so dark, you just don't notice the wear and tear, really.
Yeah, but absolutely great to be back in Cineworld in Dublin. They're really good. It's a place we used to go really regularly. So it's been a long time. Like the last movie we went to see, we actually got to see one movie in between, which was Tenet. Got to see that in the cinema, which was a great cinema experience. But great to be back for an MCU movie.
And we saw Wonder Woman as well.
Not in Cineworld.
No, but in another cinema, which was called The Lighthouse, which was pretty good as well.
Yeah.
It's nice to be in the cinema, but yeah, the comfort. I guess there's pluses and minuses,
of course,
for both, isn't there? Really, so it's interesting.
I am looking forward to Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which is September, which is our next MCU film. But that is still far away. Should we discuss Black Widow?
Yes, absolutely. That should have given everybody time to go and watch the movie, right?
Yeah, really.
I guess
We've rabbled for a while. You've more than enough time now.
Excellent. Well, this movie was directed by Kate Shortland, an Australian director, first time working on a comic book project, usually works on more indie movies. I wanted to just bring in a little bit of feedback we got in from Heather Wallace, one of our Australian listeners to Defenders TV podcast. She said, "I'm so excited for this and so happy for Kate Shortland. She's from my hometown of Canberra. She's talked a lot about how an iconic independent cinema here, Electric Shadows, shaped her love of film. It was a huge part of my film development too. I saw Blade Runner there with my big sister when I was a kid. I haven't gone on to be an internationally recognised filmmaker, but it did give me a love of cinema."
Excellent stuff. Excellent,
Thanks,
Heather.
Heather. I just thought it would be really nice to have someone from Canberra give their impression of Kate Shortland.
It's interesting as well with the indie that Kate has mainly done indie film. In this movie particular, just the young Natasha Romanoff cycling down the street and the way the camera follows her, looking to the side and coming into the driveway. I always find that a very indie kind of feel of sort of bringing your audience into, the small town or the neighborhood, whatever it is. I mean, I know it's not necessarily indie, but certainly as well with E.T. as well, with the whole Elliot, and his bikes and his bike gang and so on. Yeah. But it's just, I always feel is that, or even just that sweep through the neighborhood, whether it's following a car or a bike or so on. I always find that has a very, indie feel.
I could certainly see her voice in this. Yeah.
I see a lot of, the directors who grew up in the 80s. That this is a go-to. It's the why Stranger Things. Nostalgia is a great piece of work, but nostalgia from a director's point of view is also, it influences a lot of their style and their decisions, and you can see that with a majority of the directors now who are around our age, who grew up in the 80s, 90s, who these were their formative years of cinema going, and they've gone forward and backwards and watched other things, and of course, but these are the formative years. So you see this. A lot of the same, I'm going to say trends, but we'll call it style of cinematography and directorship. That it is that kind of, it has that, they all have that Goonies-esque
exactly.
type feeling, entrance, where it is, as you said, it's that sweeping neighborhood entrance. It's like, it's Willy Wonka. It's come with me and you'll see. Da, 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 da. It's that kind of bringing you into the world, into the film, and that then it's like, and you're down and you're in the world at the end of the bike ride.
Yeah, I would say probably for myself, I would say this feels unique in the MCU. This style in a lot of the parts of it, and a lot of the film. I'll certainly say it right now that it does feel absolutely MCU. Lots of action, lots of fighting, but in the moments of the quiet moments, the camera work that's done, the direction in certain scenes feels very like an indie movie and doesn't feel like something we've seen in so many movies so far in the MCU. So great to have that eye in there, and really hopeful for the future when we get a lot more directors who haven't worked in big budget projects coming up directing the upcoming movies. It'll be really interesting to see if their style comes through as much as Kate Shortland's did. That's really really intriguing for me.
And I have to say, I really liked young Natasha's blue hair.
Oh yes,
I kind of want to get that, to be honest. Not maybe as much more highlights, but it was cool.
John's going for blue rinse. You're not old enough, John. You're not old enough. Definitely want to call out here on the credits for the movie.
Cool blue electric, please. Not blue rinse. I am not about to go onto Coronation Street.
Just yet.
I definitely want to call out here another big credit for the movie. Scarlett Johansson is executive producer on Black Widow. Just noticed recently, because I was checking this up, she is the first of the MCU actors to get an executive producer credit on one of the movies. But Tom Hiddleston does have an executive producer credit on Loki, being that he's been in the MCU for such a long time, like Scarlett Johansson. It seems like that's a very good way to attract those actors back to do a big or maybe final project for them. Scarlett Johansson has confirmed this is her final appearance as Natasha Romanoff, until we see her in Hawkeye, maybe in the future, but...
Until she's brought back to life.
Yeah.
No one ever dies.
Never, not in the MCU. The screenplay for this movie was written by Eric Pearson. We've talked about Eric Pearson quite a lot, because he's written lots of the Marvel shorts before. Then he landed a job on Agent Carter and wrote 3 or 4 episodes of Agent Carter. In fact, when we were covering Agent Carter, he did get in contact with us and has listened to Defenders TV podcast and our coverage of Agent Carter, which I always find quite funny. He then went on to write Thor Ragnarok. A lot of people seem to credit Taika Waititi for writing that. Taika Waititi only directed Thor Ragnarok. His real writing credit for MCU is going to be coming up in his apparently crazy 4th Thor movie that's coming up. So Taika Waititi, not the writer of that. That was Eric Pearson. More recently, he's written Godzilla vs. Kong as well, which was a good fun movie.
It was. I enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's kaiju versus kaiju. What more do you want?
Exactly.
Yeah, but it's been done so badly in the past that only the writer can make it okay.
Mutant animals are always good in movies. They are my sort of
go-to
sort of genres. Whether it's Anaconda, it's Arachnophobia, you name it, Piranha, or King Kong. Love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because of Eric Pearson's work on Agent Carter and all the other movie shorts, he has also served as a script doctor on Ant-Man, Spider-Man Homecoming, Avengers Endgame, and Infinity War. So he would be brought in to kind of touch up the characters and make sure they fit in with the universe he created within, or helped create within Agent Carter and within that Captain America world as well. So lots and lots of stuff. Who else was in the writing party on here? We also had Ned Benson. Doesn't have a huge amount of credits to his name, but he is working on the story for this movie with Jack Schaefer, the more recently known as the WandaVision showrunner. Did a great job over there in WandaVision, so her talents brought on board for Black Widow.
Amazing.
There you go. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for Black Widow?
Sure, comrade.
Oh, no, this is going to be bad, isn't it?
No, I can assure everyone I will not be doing it in a Russian accent.
Mm-hmm.
I won't be able to hold it for that long, and it will inevitably turn into Welsh or something else.
I think that's what
the film
said in his interview for this job. Sorry. John, do you want to give us your synopsis then?
Sure. Natasha Romanoff is on the run from General Ross after her decision to go against the Sokovia Accords by allowing Captain America and Bucky Barnes to escape T'Challa. Now in hiding in Norway, she is forced to confront the darker parts of her past when her estranged sister, Yelena Belova, sends her a case of vials taken from a former agent that can bring down the Black Widow program. Intent on reclaiming the vials, General Dreykov, the mastermind behind the Black Widow program, sends his latest creation, Taskmaster, to pursue Natasha. While Natasha believes Dreykov to be dead from her assassination attempt back in Budapest as she defected to S.H.I.E.L.D., a dangerous web of espionage involving the Black Widow program ties Natasha back to her past. She must deal with both her history and broken relationships, from her family days back in the USA with her sister and parents Alexei and Melina, her training at the Red Room, and her defection from the Black Widows. Reunited with her family, they decide to work together, and using all of their abilities, they make their way to the Red Room to defeat Natasha's dangerous creator and free the Black Widows from his control. Several years later, Yelena is visiting the grave of Natasha after she sacrificed her life on Vormir. But her reflections are disturbed by the coughing of a one Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. Val has learned that Hawkeye was responsible for the death of her sister and sends Yelena off to take revenge on the Avenger.
In the upcoming Hawkeye coming out later this year on Disney Plus. Yes.
Exactly.
That took me a second.
Right.
Not gonna lie, completely forgot Hawkeye was this year, and I was like, wait, what is this tying into? Wait, huh? Why Hawkeye? And literally, because we have had so little press about the Hawkeye series, it took me about, I'm not gonna lie, it took me a good 5 minutes to go, wait, so where? Because usually the film, leads up to one of the other films. I was like, how does that lead into Shang-Chi? Is Hawkeye in Shang-Chi?
It is that Yelena moment. I mean, it's kind of like, oh yeah, I forgot there was a Hawkeye TV series even, and then it was like that it was coming out this year, and it's kind of like, it's like Yelena going, what type of bullets leave a mark like that in your plaster? Like, she's a trained assassin. Surely she realizes it's not a bullet. It's like an arrow.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, need to kind of process this. But yeah, I think that's a really nice tie-in actually, because I mean, the end bit, but I guess we'll come to that later.
We certainly
on.
will, yes.
Better not spoil ourselves.
No, not that we'll spoil. We'll just run out of our format if we keep talking about the things that we're going to talk about. We usually talk about our shows and movies in our top 5 points, top 5 moments. I think a good way to start this would be on the transition, I suppose, from Captain America Civil War, which was the movie that directly precedes the events of this movie, into what's happening here. So our first point for this podcast is switching sides, because that's effectively what happens at the end of Civil War. Natasha finally rejects Team Iron Man to join Team Cap, making the right decision, going against the Sokovia Accords, and it's had massive repercussions.
In the podcast.
Yes, in the podcast, as I stared daggers at Derek.
I thought I was out, and they dragged me back in. We all knew Team Cap was the right decision, because that's what the MCU tells us.
But, much like propaganda in 1930s Germany.
Yes, I will keep saying it and keep editing the podcast to make it sound like you guys agree with me. But effectively, I really like that they have grounded it in this the battle in the airport, effectively, where Natasha turns on Team Iron Man, Team Tony, stopping Black Panther from capturing Steve and Bucky. And I love how it turns into this international incident, effectively, from General Ross, because you don't really realize it. You're kind of going, oh, Black Panther got punched in the face a few times. But General Ross says the reason he's after her is because, well, she fought against the king of Wakanda. So, that's a kind of a different thing than just choosing a different side. She stopped the king of Wakanda from getting what he wanted. And so I did like that little twist on it.
I have to say, I enjoyed this. Although, speaking for some of the non-deep lore MCU fans, or just people enjoying films, they needed a title card or something to explain where this movie took place.
Okay.
Because I had people turn around to me and go, so where is this? Like, I thought she was dead. Mm-hmm. Literally, people have said, I'm like, okay, well, do you remember Captain America Civil War? No. Okay. Do you remember Endgame? Yes. Do you remember Infinity War? Yes. Okay. It's before that.
Yeah.
But after Civil War. Which Civil War? Captain America Civil War. Oh, I never saw that. Like, there's all the, like, I had to literally kind of go, okay, well, it's taking place in this small bit of time in between these two films. And they were like, oh, okay. They didn't really explain that. And I was like, well, actually, yeah, we knew it because straight away the repercussions of, well, okay, well, what happened and how it starts, understood. But interesting to see that they didn't title card it, like, or telegraph it even that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I guess I guess though, in general though, this really does like fix it in that moment in time, and it makes sense for the character. You know, she really is part of that espionage. You know, the Shield, the whole Winter Soldier, Civil War type of thing. And I think, I would more say that she goes against the Sokovia Accords in that she is, in agreement with them, but it's ultimately, I guess she's somewhere in the middle. She's like saying, you know, I do support them, but, let Captain America and Bucky do this thing, and stops T'Challa. And of course he is, and I think that's why it's really important that, you know, for General Ross, his whole thing is that it's because he's a king. I mean, it would be like kind of her sort of backflipping, you know, Queen Elizabeth, and then all of a sudden it would be kind of a bit of an incident that goes beyond some squabbles within the Avengers, you know. But I certainly, I thought this was really good. But I think you're right, Chris. You know, it's like we've said with the TV shows with Wanda, and it's all, you know, all coming from Feige himself. It's the idea that they need to make it accessible, to people that maybe aren't, as you say, sort of rooted in the previous, you know, 12, 14 MCU movies or the TV shows and so on. And I think certainly they get the timing right. But certainly, if you've forgotten Captain America, Civil War or Winter Soldier, then you're thinking, thought she was dead, but I mean, still, well, I think it's still, people can make the leap that it's a flashback, I guess, because it does start with the USA.
That's what I was going to say. The initial introduction to the movie is her as a child with her family. We'll talk about that in a second.
And her great blue rinse.
And her great blue rinse, exactly. But so that's your original intro, and then you get brought further on in her timeline. So I think you can make the leap that this is not after her death. I think that would be a bit of a shocking leap to make, and I do think they carry it along well enough. You're not expected to watch all 23 movies that have been in the MCU in order to understand this. In fact, if you haven't done it, and if you're a little bit confused by the movie, pop on over to the Marvel Legends little shorts that are on Disney Plus. There's an 8-minute short of all of the storyline of Natasha so far, and it's a really good tie-in to kind of clear up any of those things you may have forgotten over the past. But this is her big moment of switching from one side to the other side, and this is where she's on the outs, and as all of the Avengers are. It's where they all broke apart at the end of Civil War. I love this scene because, you know, I'm a huge spy movie fan, and this moment where she's in a bathroom, getting herself prepared, and she's having a conversation on the phone, looking in a mirror with what we think is the army at the door waiting to come in, and then you realize she's actually on a ship, miles away, already getting away, and has completely escaped with no issue at all from Ross. I think that's just so well done. She's
in Norway at that point, and so that is, I really like that. That's a great little, I guess, trope in some respects, but it's really, really good. It's very Jason Bourne, as well. And, I like the conversation that she has with General Ross as well, because he's there with a cane. He's not looking too great, which is, she says herself. And, you know, we hear it's another bypass operation that he's had, and I'm just, you know, is this setting Ross up for a transformation of his own? Because in the comics, he also looks to try and improve his lot in life by it is gamma radiation, isn't it, as well? So you know, there's a sense there that he is falling apart a bit, that he is you know, ill health and so on, and he's always been chasing after these what he considers monsters and ghouls in a sense with the Hulk and so on. So I I think that could be a really interesting way to take General Ross as well, moving forward. And it's certainly, at least, whether we see him much, who knows. But he is kind of like that reliable metronome, isn't he? He always clicks back and he shows up if needed. It's really good, actually. Yeah. And it really helps the consistency, but you can see them taking General Ross through that kind of transformation at some point, and maybe that will be in the TV show with She-Hulk. Who knows? You know,
maybe.
Yeah. Overall, with Thaddeus Ross, I enjoy seeing him every time, but at this point, I'm like, I want to see more. He's only ever been I don't even want to say supporting character. He's been a story character in that he is there as an antagonist to the story arc in most of these films. Aside from, he was in Incredible Hulk, wasn't he?
No, he was a central character in Incredible
Hulk.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, it's the interesting part about William Hurt. He was in Incredible Hulk, a movie long forgotten, really, in the MCU, one that really didn't tie in much. They had some moments of it, but obviously Bruce Banner not being played by the same actor, they don't really flash back to very often, but they have brought William Hurt along in these kind of little moments in and out throughout the movie. So good to see him back in here in Black Widow, and it sets the period really well, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, if, you know, a bit like the A-Team, if you need a government or military official that no one can trust and no one likes, call General Ross.
Absolutely. One of the other cool things about the spy trope of spy movies that is taken in as well is Natasha, after arriving in Norway, contacting her connection, the agent, who is, in comic books, this is a former SHIELD agent who's now set up a business with other spies, being able to sell them equipment and stuff like that. So, and does have a relationship with Natasha, as you can probably see. They're laying the groundwork for that in this movie here. But I love this idea that she's just able to make a phone call and able to get a safe house and all the kind of gear and stuff that she needs. And I really like Oti Fagbale in this movie. He's from Handmaid's Tale. That's where we know him from. But I really like his relationship with Natasha here, where it's kind of, give me 3 days notice, I can come up with something amazing for you. Give me an hour's notice, I could come up with something for you.
Yeah, he's kind of like he's like the Q, isn't he? Yeah. And it is really, I did like his little phrase, "I'm not made of jets," when he provides sort of the clapped out former sort of Russian helicopter. And it's really, he was a nice little touch point. But dare I say it, maybe true love being set up, but will never realize itself because, I mean, she doesn't have a thing for Banner, and ultimately she's dead. So I guess we will never know where their flirtations may have taken them.
3 or 4 years between now and then, I think, or maybe a couple of months. I don't know exactly how long is between that time. But
well, it depends on if he was snapped.
If he didn't get snapped, yes, there's a 5-year period there. So
that's true. Actually,
the other part of our first point of switching sides is our introduction to Yelena, and we haven't seen Yelena Belova in any of the movies in the past. So this first introduction of Florence Pugh as the character on a mission. With another Black Widow effectively taking down one of their own, who's stolen these vials. Again, another undercover covert mission. Bit of a surprise how this goes down, where I think the fight was really good, actually, I must say, where they have the fight in the street and she takes out her colleague, effectively, not knowing that it's her colleague, stabs her, and then gets sprayed in the face with this vial, which is the central story of this movie, and gets freed from her mind control, effectively. I really like this scene, but a real surprise that this is how it goes down. I thought this was just a mission to take in someone. They were working for potentially the Russian government. She was the Black Widow of Russia, basically. She was, but not this type of murderous contractor, effectively, that she is. So
I enjoyed this. This sets up Yelena as a separate style widow. And obviously there's jokes ahead in regards to the posing aspects of her sister, which I absolutely loved. Yeah. But you get her ferociousness, you get her tenacity, you get some of her kind of personality come through in this opening scene. And you get a very quick story. And it's not until later that we get the full context of it. But I thought it was enough that it piques a lot of people's interest very quickly. You're like, ooh, what does this mean now? And you kind of like, just also the sniper, like seeing how of an elite.
Yeah, they are so elite, Chris, that they bring a mattress to fire their sniper gun. I was expecting kind of mojitos, maybe caprinas by the side, given that, you know, it was a nice warm climate there in Morocco. I was just thinking, wow, they're really looking after themselves here with this comfort level that they're doing as they sort of sniper their way through whatever they were going to do.
This is not their first day on the job.
No, it really isn't.
It's true. But it's also, I just want to see, I wish to see the 10 minutes preceding that where they're lugging a mattress down the road. Oh, we're on a mission, must be covert. Mattress.
It's like if they're in the Caribbean somewhere, they would be in a hammock and they would just kind of use their big toe to fire off the sniper gun to kill someone about, 2 miles off on a ship or yacht or something on the, the Azure Sea
film.
Kind of thing.
That's Wanted.
It's just like, I really liked that, for sure. I loved this introduction though. I mean, there is a lot of pew, 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 pew in this movie, both, Florence Pugh, but also, sort of gun action. And, did you like that?
No.
Okay, grand.
I did.
But
I approve this message.
But I love this. And I mean, we'll get into her character more, but this is just, very much, she's a Black Widow here, and the switching of sides actually completely out of her control. It's the former agent, the former Black Widow, who is effectively trying to defend herself. There's a good little fight there in the alleyway. You see some of her skills sort of not ziplining, but abseiling down the side of the, down the building. Yeah. But, I thought this was, really, really good.
Yeah, I really liked how that was filmed. The shot, the perspective shot where you have, the escaping agent getting hit by the door that's opening by Yelena, when it opens in her face and she gets knocked down by a car. I just thought the actual shot itself was really dynamic, really felt Bourne-like, a really cool moment.
Yeah.
But again, she's now completely turned on the agency, and the history that she's known, her entire history is now, gone. Because she has this red dust blown on her face. She's free of the control that she's had. And this kind of leads us on to our second point, because she gets these vials and sends them on to the safe house in Budapest. But the agent brings those to Natasha in her new safe house. So Natasha is suddenly being targeted for having these vials, over in Norway. A truly country traveling movie, this. Lots of different locations, very Bond, as is always the case with these types of movies. That touch point of going to different, loads of different countries around the world. It's really cool.
Yeah, and very similar to Falcon and the Winter Soldier as well. It really puts it in that genre.
Exactly.
And I think, it's really good. I mean, I think, I really like as well here, because when Yelena is turned effectively with the release of this antidote, then we do get this sort of, look at, Dreykov's, and other Black Widows saying we need to, employ the Taskmaster protocol.
Yeah.
So here's our first look then at Taskmaster, who is, sent with the primary objective to go after the vials, but not knowing that Natasha Romanoff is there as well.
So our second point is on the run from Taskmaster. So this is our comic book villain for the movie, I guess. Dreykov, we probably wouldn't call him the comic book villain because I don't really know him from the comic books. If he does exist, it's Taskmaster is the one that we know from the comic books. A lot of talk about this, and we'll probably get into it more in our feedback. I know Taskmaster. He's been in video games. He's been in Captain America comic books quite a lot, but I have no real connection to him. I've always kind of seen him as when they need a villain to mirror your main character's style to make it a bit more of a difficult combat, then they put in Taskmaster. But I know he has his own comic book series run, which I never read. So I know some people who are fans of the character. As always, there's quite a lot of changes to the character for the MCU. So a lot of people who are fans of the character not particularly happy with having him quite significantly changed for the movie.
Whoa. Derek, are you telling me somewhere on the internet, someone is unhappy and giving out about a change.
Yes.
Tell me I'm wrong. Really?
It'd be interesting to know what the change is. What the general feeling of unhappiness around which change. I mean,
it is the change in gender. It is the change in origin. It is the change in overall ability. To be fair, they have changed the character, but Derek is right, in my opinion, and I'm very much, we'll get into it more in our feedback section and stuff. Let's talk about this opening, right? So this introduction to Taskmaster. This introduction to Taskmaster is cool.
Yeah, it really is.
Like,
on the bridge.
That bridge scene was just like, we see, okay, so Widow, where first of all, her generator runs out of fuel. So first of all, it's like the agent kind of messed up there. Come on, just like one extra bit of fuel after 6 hours. Come on.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be, anyway, he does say it's not going to be the greatest after with only a few hours notice. But, anyway.
But all the time he's been sleeping in her bed. He could have got some petrol and brought it back,
Yeah. But we get to this bridge scene, and this bridge scene, I was like, I was really impressed by, because it is that comic book scene. It is that your hero is injured, your hero has to fight the unrelenting villain. It's that setup where it's kind of like it's dark, it's gritty, I enjoyed this. Like we see him flip the shield. We see all of his abilities within a short period of time.
Well, let me just absolutely give compliments to IMAX and the sound design for this scene when she's just driving down Country Road going off to get her gas or get her petrol for it. And all we see is a rocket launcher come out of nowhere and blow the car down the road. It was totally shocking.
It really
that was one of those moments which you just don't get to experience correctly outside of cinema. I guess it feels like just a complete shock.
I was literally hanging off the renovated ceiling in the IMAX. So I'm glad they did it up, to be honest, just so it had the integrity to hold me. But it was a complete shock. Really, really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like the thing, you when you are introducing it, one of the main antagonists, say, so the Terminator-esque character.
Yeah.
This scene where you basically, they are level setting to a degree of how much Natasha, to be fair, how below Natasha is to Taskmaster.
Right.
And by below, I mean they can mirror multiple characters. And we kind of see, first you see the shield, then you see the sword of Ronan, then you see the flips of Black Widow.
And the posing.
Yes, the posing.
Yeah.
I enjoy this scene, and I think it was even just the ending was fun, because you do see, again, what Natasha is good for, which is the she is still a spy, so she goes in, she confuses them, and then escapes by them essentially kicking her, Spartan kicking her off the bridge.
I mean, the fighting was excellent. I mean, Taskmaster is almost like the Mandalorian, I guess. I mean, in terms of like all these weapons. I loved the mirroring that they did on the bridge. Really cool. Really just signifying the mimic that Taskmaster is. Yeah. Having the display showing where they're taking the body points as well. Really good introduction. The fighting.
And you're right, Chris, that does feel very Terminator. That's exactly what you'd see from the T-800 back in the 80s and 90s movies, where he's just picking the points that he needs to go after. But in this case, I love that it's kind of building a model of the bones of the person. So you see the dots coming up on screen for each muscle of their opponent as they're building this picture of how their fighting style would go. I think it's a really good use if you're introducing the characters to someone who doesn't know who Taskmaster is, as a lot of people don't. I think they've done a really good job here.
Yeah, and the fighting, the moment where Natasha fires her sort of hook at him and to the bridge and pulls him back as he's going after the vials. But the way then the sword comes out from Taskmaster, and, before they're strung upside down, Taskmaster has cut the wire, and so on. I really like that. I think the only thing I was kind of a little, I guess it's just it's just movies in general. The thing I didn't understand was, so is Taskmaster not waterproof, that they can't go after Natasha? Because, they do see that the vials have been taken. Natasha is ultimately, pushed, knocked, blown off the side of the bridge and into the fjord there in Norway. But I just didn't understand why Taskmaster, with this primary objective that we saw previously, then just stood and looked at the river and didn't go in. And I just thought, did they just forget to make all the electronics waterproof?
Maybe that's it, yeah. Like
Probably.
We do see a disc being put in and out of Taskmaster's neck. So potentially, yeah, that's not a waterproof torch.
I must keep my head... She's basically the dog. She has to keep her head above water at all times.
That's it. It basically has sort of made Taskmaster sort of like the Wicked Witch of the West in The Wizard of Oz. Yeah, exactly. And I was just like, I thought that was just like odd. I think another bit of a chase would have just finished that off for me. Could have been that Taskmaster was sort of just mown down by the ferry crossing or something like that Natasha really had time to get out. But I just didn't understand why Taskmaster didn't pursue Natasha there. But anyway, the fighting and the bridge scene was absolutely awesome.
But amazing if that's the flaw, that it didn't come back later on in the movie where, throws a glass of water in Taskmaster's face to shut them down or something like that. But yes, this does lead to Natasha going back to her former safe house in Budapest. Now, as MCU fans, Budapest is a city that's been mentioned a lot in the cinematic universe. This was how we knew that Natasha and Hawkeye had this relationship when they were first introduced in the Avengers. We knew that something big had gone down in Budapest, and we get the story here. I thought it was, I guess you can't bring everybody back for this movie, but I thought because we'd heard about it so much, of this story of Budapest and how important it was to her history, that we knew that Hawkeye was there with Black Widow at the time. I kind of was expecting a little moment with Jeremy Renner in that flashback where we see what the mission was. We get to learn that originally the reason why she was in Budapest was she was there to kill Dreykov. She ended up killing his daughter, or so she thought, in order to take him out, and that was the moment she moved over to S.H.I.E.L.D. But I just expected in these scenes where we see the flashback why she was in Budapest originally, and why she thinks of it as kind of a second home for herself, is because she lived there for so long, undercover with Hawkeye. I kind of expected to see him there. I
thoroughly agree. This was a bit of an anticlimax for me in terms of Budapest. Yeah. Because they had built this up, and what we got was a flashback scene with her in a car.
Yeah.
We got narrative bits from Natasha, like, kind of going, oh, we spent 2 days in this crawl space alone, and or we spent 3 weeks in the safe house by ourselves. I was expecting a bit more, and it was literally the joke from Yelena of, like, what is this?
Yeah.
Kind of, well, what gun does this? And you're like, oh, Hawkeye was there with her. Okay, cool. I was expecting a bit more. Now we do know the story. I'd still like to see, unless they're doing, like, can you imagine they do a short?
We will never see it on screen now. I think the original thought was back just after the Avengers that we would see Hawkeye and Natasha together. There would be either a short or there would be a full movie about the situation in Budapest. But this going to Budapest does allow Yelena and Black Widow to meet up and have, well, the very traditional two heroes in the Marvel Universe meet up. Of course they fight first, right? Even though these two characters know each other and they're supposed to have been sisters in the past, there is this distrust between the two of them. Clearly Yelena working still for the Black Widows, and Natasha working on the side of the Avengers. Of course there's going to be distrust, but I did like that it ended off in a fight, because it's so traditional in Marvel to have a big punch up the first time you meet a possibly heroic character in the universe.
Yeah, I love their meet up. I thought it was really good. I was a little, why are they fighting, given that they were sisters? I know there's a distrust there. Natasha doesn't know whether Yelena is, well, I guess she still thinks she is a Black Widow, so really can't trust her. Yeah. And likewise. So I think ultimately I kind of came to accept that. But initially I was like, why are they fighting? Just because you see the family environment, at the start of the movie back in the USA, and you've not really had any information to say what, this kind of estrangement that happened, I guess, other than that they went into the Black Widow program. But because they both went into it, I thought, whilst it was still horrendous, it was like, yeah, it's like Black Widow camp together, two sisters, but obviously it's not like that, at all. I think, like yourselves, I think having the Budapest flashbacks with Clint Barton in there, I just think rather than the references to, what gun makes those marks and we spent time here, I think needed to be in this movie. I don't see where it's going to be anywhere else, to be honest.
Yeah.
And given it's been referenced so many times, it felt like either they could have put it into flashback or, I think in this movie, it's referenced that Clint is already captured, by Ross and so on. So he can't be there to help her out, in kind of that, with Yelena and then go on their separate ways. Yeah. But I was thinking they could have potentially have done that if they weren't sort of suggesting that, that he was already captured. But it would have been nice to see him. I definitely think that.
I'd just like to have seen Jeremy Renner in the flashbacks. I wouldn't have expected him to be in Budapest. Yeah. But I do love the gag of her pronouncing Budapest correctly and everybody else correcting her constantly. Budapest. Yeah. Which I think is really good fun. And the ride through the streets of Budapest, the action sequence that we have there on the motorbikes and the cars is so good. It's again, we keep referencing Bourne. I really like how visceral the driving sequences are. Yeah. I don't know why she crashes the car that they take when Natasha gets in and they steal a car and she reverses it into the car behind them before getting out of a parking space, basically. I don't know why she does that. But other than that, really good, exciting scene through Budapest. I'm wondering, given that Moon Knight is filming over in Budapest at the moment, I wonder whether we're going to see those streets again in Moon Knight, the TV series.
Yeah, I guess so. I did think it was a little, the car, that was this one CGI moment where the car, felt like it was on a wire so that it could go down the stairs into the subway. I thought that was like, okay, could it just not have crashed up top and they run down? But I loved the little things in this. I mean, like, as well, because you've got the big action sequence, but, this is where you really get the sense of Florence Pugh as Yelena, being that little sister, having her digs at her bigger sister, which I thought was really nice. I thought that was really good. And there's that little touch from Natasha because, Yelena is injured in that crash. And she's trying to just stop the bleeding. And Natasha says, no, don't. So that they can do the blood trail for Taskmaster to follow, but ultimately, manage to escape from him by going into the crawl space there. I thought that was a nice little touch. It felt really, sort of just Bourne-y as well and very espionage. And I really liked that. And I think that's what was really nice about these sequences. It's also the moment in this sequence where Natasha realizes the extent of the mind control because the Black Widows do come for them at the apartment. And whilst they're being chased across the rooftops in Budapest, one of the Black Widows, who I think was in Morocco with Yelena,
she was,
she falls and is injured and is ultimately told to kill herself by a remote Dreykov. So that was, some important story bits here in Budapest as well.
Yeah. I absolutely love Budapest. It made me go, I want to go.
It's fabulous.
It looked fabulous in this, and I was like, ooh. And I literally turned to the missus and went, when we can travel again. Yeah. Let's go. Because I'm like, it looks very Florence-y, it looks Venice, but not.
It's more like Venice.
Yeah.
John and I were there for the Formula One a couple of years ago. Really, really good city. Well worth visiting.
Yeah. Very cool.
Would like to
the fact that it's an MCU location made it even better now. Really enjoyed this overall sequence. So the rooftop run, again, we keep kind of mentioning Bourne, but that's essentially essentially what it is. Even with, but overall, the rooftop run. We mentioned Bourne, but even harkens back to Winter Soldier. Harkens back to that kind of noir espionage run film, James Bond. Like, it's just that action set piece.
Yeah.
Like, it's visceral, it's fun.
Yeah.
Like, but then also showing that Widow broken on the ground.
Yeah.
Like, that's a side of the MCU we have yet to see, really. The damage that some people can take. Again, because aside from Taskmaster, most of the... and the Red Guardian, no one here is powered.
Yes.
These are all just... we'll call them enhanced individuals. We're not sure, like, what some of the Red Room...
Highly trained. Highly
trained. Like, the best of the human can give.
There are definitely moments in this movie that I wonder how much superpowers Natasha has, because there's a lot of falls that she makes that she should not make.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And she just takes a lot of ibuprofen, apparently.
Yeah.
But
like, I know you can't have her just falling off a roof and dying, but even in this scene in Budapest, there's a moment where I thought she'd broken her leg.
Yeah, she hits the vents all the way down. It is literally every vent she hits.
She just kind of walks on. Runs on, actually, after that. Yeah, but just to mention, obviously you did say that there is a touch of Bond in here. We should really mention that she is watching the worst Bond movie, and knows every single line of it. She's watching Moonraker earlier on in the movie, the awful Roger Moore Bond movie, which is basically the one where it jumped the shark and went to space. So I just to reference that. So there is a touch of Bond in here as well. But this all leads to another one of the great, I think, indie setting moments of the scene, where we have Natasha taking care of her sister Yelena, her former sister Yelena, as they're sitting at this bench looking around them at other types of families, and kind of referencing the fact that neither of them had a family except the one they had together in the USA, the 3 years that they spent together ensconced in the USA as undercover agents. I love the discussion, I love the conversation, I love how it's filmed. I think it's a really good idea. You know, Natasha is referencing the fact that she's kind of lost the only other family that she knew, which is the Avengers, and Yelena's expressing the fact that is the only real family situation she's been in, because ever since then she's either been in training, fearing for her life, or under mind control. Yeah. So I thought it was a really good moment to just sit the characters down, have them talk to each other, and explain the whole their whole background and their whole ideals.
That's it. It really adds, doesn't it? Because, I mean, you also get that lovely little moments. You know, you reference about the ibuprofen, where they're in the shop as well, just before that. But you get the skit as well. It's like, why do you need to sort of land like that and do your hair flick, from, Yelena to Natasha? I love that. I just, but it goes from that sort of fun skit to Yelena also just saying, look, you're the trained assassin that people look up to, that is on the front of a magazine. You can't divorce yourself from what you are, even though you think you're the good guy. You're still a highly trained assassin who will kill. And I mean, interestingly enough, after all the sit down, they're looking over at a guy with his own kids, just referencing the family element of it. But they pinch his car. So, I mean, would an Avenger do that? I couldn't see Captain America sort of... No, but that's the point, No,
it's like... I'm joking, but it is quite funny, because Natasha in Budapest specifically tells off Yelena for stealing somebody's car, and the reply from Yelena going, what, do you want me to chase him down and unsteal his car from him? And then one scene later, she's stealing somebody else's car because it looks really nice, and it's in her colours. It's in black with red seats, which I thought was a nice touch. But this is the moment that they choose to take down the Red Room, and I think it's one of the more interesting parts of this. This isn't a mission where they're pushed along on what they have to do. It's a mission that the two of them choose to do. And it's the reason for it is because Natasha realized she didn't actually take out the leader of the Red Room. She didn't shut down the Red Room like she thought she had. And Yelena now has nothing to do because she's been freed from the control. So the two of them are going to go on their own mission to go and take down the Red Room and go and take down Dreykov, which I think is that feels different. It's done in loads of movies, obviously, but it feels different for the MCU. It feels like it's not a mission to take down the villain. It's the two of them choosing to go on their personal mission.
And it's team building time. They need to get their team.
Yeah.
It is a team.
So you talked about the scene and this mission being different. This is why I am happy with the choices of the directors and the writing and the where the MCU is going, because this is something, everything we're getting right now in the MCU is stuff that we have not seen, and we like, it is just different takes, different choices, because maybe in the past, this Black Widow, this scene alone was going to be them being forced to take down the Red Room, and we wouldn't have got this sit-down section. But because of who they choose as a director and who the writing staff is, we get these very unique moments that are for that. And yet I'm loving that. Like, the car door scene in the chase. Mm-hmm. That endears me to Elena so much within a few minutes, and then seeing her do the fun jabs with, as John said, the posing kind of jokes at Natasha, and then later on just was sitting there talking about the family aspect. You're getting all of this different character development within a short space of time, but at the same point, very unique and different settings within three diverse kind of narrative beats, like a chase, the jabs where they're shopping, and then the sit down. And they're all very different scenes, could have been very different scenes.
Absolutely. And I think, a lot of films don't take the opportunity to take that breath, and that can be a massive failure for big budget movies, is they don't take those moments. I always recall one of my favorite scenes from Terminator 2, and it is one of the greatest action movies of all time, but there's a moment in that movie where this is robots chasing down humans from the future. This is not, high level Oscar winning stuff, but there's a moment in that movie where John Connor and Sarah Connor are sitting at a table talking to the Terminator about the future, and they're watching kids around them, watching kids playing, and she's effectively saying there's no future. Future's not written, and if it is, we're all doomed because of how we've been playing with guns. And it's this moment where they're just allowed to breathe and talk about the theme behind the movie. And when movies choose to do that, it elevates them a bit more over just standard pew pew shooty movies. But speaking of pew pew, let's go on to our third point, because this is another massive action sequence as we break out the Red Guardian from a Russian gulag, I'm guessing. Yeah, this is just a big action sequence, but a good introduction to the Red Guardian, I suppose.
It's a very fun introduction to the Red Guardian. Just seeing him there, kind of doing the arm wrestling while boastfully kind of telling these stories about Captain America.
So has he convinced himself that he actually did fight Captain America, or was there a Captain America? Now that we've watched Captain America and the Winter Soldier, the TV show, has he fought some other Captain America in the 80s so that he doesn't know it's Steve Rogers?
Yeah.
That is it.
Right.
That is 100% where my head went. That was like, oh no, we're going to find out more. We're going to see that there were other not Steve Rogers, but there were other Captain Americas. Like they did, like in the actual comic books, there were parts where they had other Captain Americas, not even John Walker, but like beyond that. So I think this is where we're going to land. This is what we're going to see.
And he talks of himself as, it's the Russian super soldier program as well. So and we've seen it referenced with Civil War with Zemo. So this idea that there's, we're talking a lot about multiverse at the moment, but it's not just about different universes, but it's the fact that there are multiple Captain Americas potentially in this one universe, which we've really kind of been told there has been. So
now that we've watched,
so it is,
he's a hard character to like. Red Guardian, but David Harbour as an actor, you know, we probably know him best from Stranger Things. Is it a spoiler to say that Stranger Things ends off with Hopper in Russia? So this is quite funny that this movie picks up with him playing Alexei in Russia. Also quite funny in Stranger Things, he did kidnap a character called Alexei, who he travelled around with, and now he's playing a character called Alexei in this movie. But David Harbour is such a relatable type of character that I do think he brings that to this kind of horrible person in Red Guardian. He's all about the mission, I suppose, but that's what you can say to your colleagues, unless your colleagues are a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old girl, who are left behind when your mission ends. Which I think he's quite brutal about that. You know, there's a great scene when he's talking to Yelena later on, trying to tell her that he sort of likes her, trying to give her some information to her. And she says, well, all I ever heard from you was moaning about the mission, but that mission was my family. That mission was my life, effectively.
And the best part of her life as well. That's the really good thing.
That scene.
Yeah. But he's awesome here because I think he actually, of the two, between Alexei and Melina, he has the more human edge. Even when it was about the mission, we see him, you know, collecting the teddy after they've escaped from the USA. And both Yelena and Natasha have been sort of drugged and put in the back of a van to go to, and be put into the Black Widow program. So, you know, there's that side of him. And I think that really comes across that, you know, in some respects as well, you know, being in this Russian gulag, he has been betrayed by Dreykov. In that sense, he's been left to rot. He's living off nostalgia of what he's done. So that, you know, the great thing is it just that he's exaggerating, inflating, what he did in the past. Because ultimately, you know, he feels that with the USA, he was left to rot for 3 years. He wants to use his fists and all that as he's doing all these different arm wrestles. And I just thought it was really nice, sort of down and out, hero or superpowered, individual. I thought it was just played by him really, really well. And needing to sort of connect somehow back after being in this Russian gulag, which is ultimately with his pretend daughters, ultimately. And I thought this was just really kind of interesting. And like that's that idea of family that, you know, family, and you have this with Natasha, with the Avengers, that doesn't have to be biological. It can be a group of people that are similar, like we've seen with Pose, in watching Pose, this idea of creating a family. And of course,
your chosen family can be as important or more important than your real family.
And this is kind of the, you know, the very unsettled parts of a reunion ultimately at this stage between these three at the Russian gulag, which I have to say, if I was imprisoned in a Russian gulag, I think this is quite a nice one, with the sort of the snow and the ice, and the big cliffs. I thought it was kind of quite a cool location.
Inside a concrete building for most
of
the
the
day.
No, they had the exercise yard.
They do have the exercise area. But I love the fight and love the rescue scene. But I do think that moment where Yelena takes out the rocket launcher and blows up the gun turret tower and causes an avalanche that I think is about to take out every single prisoner in that gulag and every single guard of the gulag.
Yep.
She references that this would be a cool way to go, but I do feel like a lot of people are going to die.
No. They killed everyone else in that prison.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
Yelena's comment here that this is a cool way to die. This is what essentially made Florence Pugh's character and choices sing to me as the character from Killing Eve. This is essentially this is the Russian hit woman assassin who is quirky and funny and says all these types of things, and it's the choice. So this is what, while also completely had me going, I want to see more of Florence Pugh. I want to see more of Lyanna. I want her own spin-off. I want her to be the White Widow because I enjoy this character.
Yeah.
I also went, oh, I see what you've done with the character. You've essentially took Eve from Killing Eve and supplanted her in the MCU as an addition, as a funny take on the Natasha Romanoff, because they had quite similar backgrounds, essentially, to a degree. Like they both have red in their ledger, which is talked about. This for me was just, oh, okay, I see what you're doing now. I see how you're creating this new version of the character. And I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it.
Yeah. And you know, they've saved this guy that was the father, but they didn't save him for being their father. They saved him because they needed information out of him. That's kind of it. But but really good moment in seeing kind of the out of shape, we'll say, Red Guardian trying to escape. I feel like 20 years earlier, he would have been able to make that escape. We saw the escape from America that he made where he jumps on the side of a plane and he's able to shoot people off and that kind of stuff. Like, it's really, really dynamic back in the USA. Here he gets tased once, falls off, and has to be saved by Natasha, basically.
But he also, like, knocks a reinforced metal kind of door off its hinges. So, I mean, he's not completely useless.
Oh, not at all. No.
And I'm surprised he's not escaped anyway. It's just that, I guess, you know, it's very cold and a long distance to the next town, which is the whole point of Russian gulags, really.
And he's kind of hopeless because he's been put there by the Dreykov. So, yeah.
But I think, talking about out of shape, I think, you know, with them escaping this gulag and flying to where Melina is for, and this is our fourth point, the family reunion. And just, I have to say, the moment with David Harbour putting on the Red Guardian suit here, I just thought, this is perfect. Yeah. This is what we needed, was an out-of-shape superhero. I know that we've had Thor, but this, or trying to squeeze into this tight-fitting suit, I just absolutely loved. And then he's all kind of so proud where he comes into the dining room and says, it still fits. And I just wish they had made a button go pink. Because that would have just been classic.
Did you hear Melina's line in the background when he says that and just goes, I haven't washed it once. Like, I don't know now. Maybe you need to wash it once.
This for me was perfect because it was the post-pandemic, like going back to the office and you have to put your office clothes on. Yeah. So it's just like, it still fits. Don't make me. And you're like, I haven't washed it since we left the office a year and a bit ago. I enjoyed this moving towards this bit with Melina. The bit where, like, David Harbour talked about the red in the ledger and being so proud of the girls. Such a fun thing because that is something that Natasha has said across the MCU. She has blood in her ledger. She has red in her ledger, and she needs to kind of get rid of it, and that's why she's doing so much. Yeah. And he's turning it and going, we are so proud of you because of, look at so much red in your ledger, blood in your, look at you. And you're like, that's brilliant. It's just a fun nod back to, like, his different turn and, like, the view on that, which is like, it's the driving force in Natasha to be good. And he's like, no, be proud of it. And then we get to meet the mother, who the other aspect of Natasha. And again, this is only it's strange. You see that, like, this 3 years was so formative for Yelena, but actually at the same time, it's very formative to Natasha, because a lot of the things that Melina says and does continues on from what Natasha talks about as well, or has, like, so it's very, I have to give a hat off to the writers here, because again, we know that the MCU does it. They have secret teams that go back and touch up parts of the script to link it back further. But this seems a bit of a deeper callback in that, like, the red in the ledger is a fun take. The other discussions of the fake family book. It was like, oh, I remember these. It was such a fun day.
Exactly.
And there's all the stage, and it's like, even though there was nothing in the presents, because she had talked about staged photos previously in her other films.
No, right.
So I just thought these are nice little touches and callbacks sprinkled into this overall story.
But talking about not being able to trust the MCU at all, in the Marvel Legends kind of 8 or 10 minutes recap of the Black Widow story, they have the scene from Avengers where Loki is standing captured telling Black Widow who she is and what he knows about her, and he calls out she killed Dreykov's daughter in that scene. And I'm going, did he do that in the Avengers? And now can I trust it? Do I need to pull out my my Blu-ray copy of Avengers and make sure, because it probably has been updated now on Disney Plus, where they put that line in there? Because that seems really specific and really central to this movie, that who Dreykov was, who the daughter was, and it seems like written in stone 12 years ago by a completely different writer and a completely different director of what happened to Black Widow, and they have used that here. So yes, sometimes they're incorporated, sometimes they're actually genuinely changed to fit these stories. But yeah, you're right. This period of time that these four members of the family were together is massively important to all of them, but they've all gone off to do different things. Natasha being returned to the Black Widow program. She was in it from the time she was about 3. It seems, or even younger, potentially from when she was a baby, effectively, is what we hear. Yelena being brought to it for the first time as a 4-year-old, because she was taken as a child and brought into this family straight off. So she's never gone through the Black Widow program. So that has informed the rest of her life. Melina then going into research for Dreykov from when she returned from the USA, and she's been pretty formative in the creation of these Black Widows. We see her talking about these mind control pigs that she has, and that's effectively when she's doing it. Yelena realizing, hang on a second, you're able to do that to me, or you were able to do that to me up until a couple of weeks ago. Just on a little data pad, you're able to just turn off my breathing, or you know, make me kill myself.
That research was so interesting for what they did, but also that scene with the pig, I legitimately was going, what? Ooh, it was uncomfortable, and very much so, more than I've seen in other MCU properties ever. That was, for me, hard. That was harsh.
I think it's the fact that she named it Alexei and then said, doesn't he look like you? And then took away its breathing. It suddenly made you connect with the pig and then think that it's going to die.
Yeah, poor little piggy.
He was fine. No pigs were harmed in the making of this. Even CGI
he got
pigs.
up and, he had another 60-something seconds. Or 11, so he had another 11 seconds till he died.
Yeah.
I was like, oh. This scene overall, I think, was fun.
Yeah.
Because what you start to see is what has happened to many of us, which is where you sit down with your mother and father as an adult and you're drinking and you're getting this, you get that family camaraderie, but as an adult. But also what we see here is the differing opinions of what these 3 years meant to them all. And it's just, again, so interesting to see the take on Yelena and how she, they're all saying these things of oh, it meant nothing, or it was just this or just that. And she's like, no, for me, it was my life. It was the best time forever, because we do forget, straight after this, she goes into the Black Widow program, and it's essentially her life for the next 20-something years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I also love how each person slips into their role as well.
Yeah.
You know, you've got the older sister who doesn't want to be in control of the parents of the family, criticizing younger sister, even tells them all to shut up, and Yelena's like, what did I do? I didn't even get involved.
Yeah, I know.
You've got the mother and father trying to make the daughters eat food, and because they need to put a bit more weight on them. I think there's just that really fun moment of them all assuming their former roles in that really quick succession. Yeah.
I thought this was a standout scene in the whole movie, a bit like with the one-to-one with between Natasha and Yelena. This really kind of coalesced the group as well. And it was like you say, it was all the different viewpoints. And for me, this is where really Yelena kind of came out, because you see how much it affects her, and to an extent it actually changes Natasha's mind, because Natasha and her are at the different spectrum here. And Natasha kind of almost quite objectively is like, well, I have my new family. It's the Avengers. This family was a pure lie. And, you know, we have about her, trying to find her real biological mother that is brought up as well. And so for her, I think Natasha is almost quite dispassionate here about it. And I think Melina is a little as well, here. Yelena brings the kind of, yeah, but this was the best time of my life, as Chris has mentioned. And I think you see it affect her most. You see that the great talk that her and Alexei have in the bedroom just before then they're attacked by the forces of Dreykov. But, I think this is where she's really powerful. And to some extent, I think because of what she said here, it gets Natasha thinking about, it more and reassessing it to the point where by the end of the movie, you know, she still has the view that it's a put together family, but she can also accept them as a created family, one that there are special moments in their lives together.
Yeah.
You know?
I love Alexei trying to tell the story about his own father peeing on him when he was doing fishing, and Yelena going, "What does this mean?" And he goes, "You know, fathers." and in fact, all he needed to do to tell her how much he did care for her and how much it really meant to her is sing part of American Pie, which was her favorite song. And that's all she needed from him to kind of reaffirm the connection and reaffirm how much it really meant between the two of them. I thought that was a really nice touch, that he's trying really hard to be a father. We know now he's been in prison for so long, so he's never actually been a real father. He's only had that mission to be a father to these girls. Yeah. So I just thought that was quite fun.
He's been in prison so long that he has lots of energy now.
Oh, yes. That was the other role he tried to reassume really quickly. And Melina didn't seem too put off by it, did she?
No, she was down.
Yeah,
she was
gave him
down
a whistle
to
when he came in.
She's been living with pigs.
Yes.
That's true.
So I guess the old emotions and pheromones and what have you between the two of them are all sort of whirring quite considerably.
You glossed over quite a big moment just in when you were speaking there, John. I just want to re-highlight at this moment where we hear from Melina about Natasha's mom, that Natasha was never left by her mother, which is the story Natasha always thought, that she was just left in the street and picked up by the Black Widows, that her mother was so tenacious that she was murdered by Dreykov. She tried so hard to find Natasha that she almost uncovered the Red Room and revealed it to the world, which is where Dreykov always worked from the shadows, and her mother was killed. This connects directly into her final moments in Endgame, where she learns the name of her mother and never knew the name of her mother. So this is quite a big moment for Natasha to learn that story. And now we see why she was so emotional at learning the name of her mother in that moment in Endgame.
Yeah.
From Red Skull.
Yeah, of all people. No, like, it was fun because, again, she was sold, and then the mother, she was still sold, which is disgraceful. The mother was compensated, it said. And then her mother changed and went after her to get her back. Because we do find out that she was, for her genetic potential to be the best of the best. I really love how the Red Guardians uses the comedic foil in both aspects, but at the same time he has this, there is this kind of lovable bear aspect to him. And then we see that when he is shot multiple times with tranquilizer darts, which is brilliant. It's just one flies in, he goes, "You think that does something?" And I'm like, "Oh, that was good.
Classic.
Well done."
Yeah,
like that's
classic.
kind of like Hulk level. Kind of like, "You think this does something?"
And again, you know, even just in that little moment, it tells you that this is Dreykov coming for them, because Dreykov knows every one of these people. He knows all their abilities. He knows exactly who they are because they worked for him. So, so it is that moment where you wouldn't have Red Guardian being attacked incorrectly by someone who knows him so well. So he is absolutely captured and put up in a prison, which takes us on to our final point, which is the battle at the Red Room. We finally get to see the Red Room. If you remember all the way back to Agent Carter, the Red Room has been something that's been in the TV shows. It's been in the movies. We've had mentions of it and flashbacks to it in Avengers Age of Ultron. And we now get some more flashbacks to what's still going on in the Red Room and get more detail behind what's going on. It's always been a dangerous place in the MCU. It's always been this horrifying place, really, about dealing with children who've been stolen from their families or stolen from the streets, as we hear here. And a lot of them don't make it through the training program. But we hear a little bit more brutality in there from the leader here, Dreykov, the person who puts all the girls through these camps effectively. And we hear from Yelena saying, 20 girls will go through this and 19 of them will be killed. If they when they fail, he kills them, throws them away because they're useless to him effectively. So it feels really brutal and feels like the right impetus for this movie to explore that. Obviously, it's the history that Black Widow grew out of effectively as well. So
yeah.
What did you think of the Flying Fortress?
I thought it was Russian SHIELD in the clouds. To me, this is Russia's counterpart to SHIELD. Ultimately,
not a government agency,
but
at one point it was.
At one point it was army, basically.
So I really liked this. I mean, I liked it in the clouds. I thought it was really kind of iconic. It felt good. I mean, and yeah, it's Russian SHIELD basically. It's got the hover helicarrier.
The technology exists in this world, and he's obviously bought it and used it for himself. Yes,
we've had SHIELD in space. And now we've got SHIELD in Russia, floating in the clouds.
You're now trying to get a punch, aren't you? I thought this was an interesting thing. I was like, we never know where it is. It's always somewhere different. It's a unique take on that opinion, on that line about the Red Room has always been, it is everywhere and nowhere.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, that's a clever way of putting it. It is essentially orbiting in the sky.
Yeah.
And it is just hidden with these little clouds and stuff. I was like, clever. You're gonna see it. So I was just like, I don't know how that's got away for so long, but okay, cool.
Yeah.
It is very... Yeah, exactly. It's very James Bondy in that
it is.
It's a flying sky fortress.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, but we know, like, how did Stark satellites never find it?
They were more interested in other things.
And
true.
I guess if the helicarrier can cloak, then
maybe this
can possibly as well. We don't see it here, but I guess there's ways of hiding their location, for sure.
Yeah. And then, so we are in the Red Room, and we are essentially given our Mission Impossible moment.
Yes.
Yay!
Yes.
Come on, this is the ultimate Mission Impossible moment. It really is. With they literally do a body swap with the holographic masks. And it's then
Natasha used to do exactly the same thing in Civil War. Yes, so it's still a Natasha Romanoff moment. She's literally done exactly this before. But I kind of like this ruse. Kind of the way it plays out. We don't know as the audience that it's Natasha sitting there across from Dreykov. He finds out pretty quickly, which I did like. The fact that he's looking into the eyes of the girl he's trained. Once you look into their eyes, you know exactly who they are. I think that's a really good line from Dreykov here. But realizing that Melina has switched in that conversation with Natasha, she's the one that called in Dreykov's army for them, but she can't call them off, but she can set everything up so that Natasha can be where she needs to be, and Yelena can be where she needs to be.
That's it. I really like the interplay actually with the mini flashbacks to that scene where she's called in the Dreykov's forces, where they come up with and hatch this plan.
Yep.
I just think it's a really nice mini redemption from Lena, because she is, at that table, at that family reunion, she's the most kind of businesslike and cold, I think. And here it's that you find through this whole massive action sequence that it did have meaning for her that time in the US. And I thought that was really good.
But it's not just the time in the US. She's only now realizing that all of the work that she's done for the last 20 years since returning from the US with this stuff from Hydra, that she's been working on to unlock the key to the mind, all this stuff that she's done, she's only just realized, actually, hang on a second, I've been creating like the nuclear bomb, effectively. I've been creating something that's being used for awful purposes, and I never once questioned it. I think that's massively important for her and her change of character. How much it's affected Yelena as well, because she does have that connection with her in the USA. But this moment where she hasn't questioned what she's been doing for 20 years, she's just been filing her reports and sending back all of the information, and having quite a close relationship with Dreykov, she still didn't realize what her work was really doing. I think that's quite a big change for her character there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the multiple threads here as we come to this massive finale where you have Natasha with Dreykov, where he is doing a classic Bond villain of effectively showing her everything. And she does that. She it pulls back to, we find out that even though she's not mind controlled, there is this pheromone protection for Dreykov that is in all Widow's kind of, I guess, old tech, so that she's not able to kill him. But he's showing her his network, where his login is, how he logs in. I guess it is tropey, but I quite like it. It's like, and here's my master plan.
Yeah.
But that's mainly because he is arrogant and he is not wanting to lose this asset, even though he knows that she absolutely despises him. He wants this asset back, and now with the new mind control technology that Melina has worked on with him.
Yeah, he gets to use an Avenger if he does that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so this is really good. Yeah. At the same time, you've got Alexei and Melina in a cell, and also you've got Yelena about to have surgery to see where they're going to pick apart her brain so that they can learn more about how this antidote actually alters and changes the brain to break his mind control. Yeah. So there's three kind of really good elements here, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. And that moment with Natasha and Dreykov, that really is calling back to her picking apart Loki in the interrogation room back in the helicarrier. Yeah. That moment where you think she's vulnerable, he's told her she can't kill him, and that's why he's revealing the plan. Soon you'll be under my control, the arrogance of him, effectively. But she has a plan to get out of this. She just needs the information, and once she has the information, then she'll get herself out of it. I love how she riles him up to try and get him to break her nose, because she doesn't really want to do it herself, but she will if she needs to. But I love that
she does.
And going, you're not strong enough. You're hit me harder, basically. And eventually it's going, oh, well, I guess I'll do it myself then, and breaks her nose to stop those pheromones from affecting her. I think that's a really good scene, but it just reveals again how good Natasha is at getting the information she needs from people. And it's a really important trait of hers.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic. Now, we do then get the massive reveal about the origin of Taskmaster. Mm-hmm. And the fate of Dreykov's daughter. Gents, what do you think?
I think this made total sense for this film. For Black Widow, this made total sense that the thing that has been driving Natasha for so long to be on the right side, this realization that that she thinks that she killed Dreykov and his daughter in order to attain her place, and that's another bit of red in her ledger, as she calls it. And it turns out that that driving force has actually given him his greatest weapon. I think that's a really interesting arc for this movie. And the reveal I thought was really good. Yeah, I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, I think so too. I thought this really felt correct for the movie and how Taskmaster was in there. Yeah. And again, it's to Dreykov that even when he should have been grieving and mourning, effectively the mutilation of his daughter, he is taking the opportunity to effectively weaponize her rather than rehabilitate her. And I think, if he does that to his daughter, you realize just how evil, how sociopathic he is in relation to these kids, that he can kill off 10 a penny, just to get his single one, perfect Black Widow from that latest batch of unwilling recruits. So I thought this was really, really good. And I mean, the only thing I felt with this, and I have to be honest, I mean, because Natasha does show her remorse here, and you see that throughout this. But I think just to, I guess just to reference Michelle Visage and RuPaul, I think if you're going to show remorse, you need to big it up. I felt there needed to be a little bit more. I think that envelope needed to be pushed a little further for me. And I guess that's more to do with the writing necessarily. Okay. But I felt that it kind of happened very quickly.
Yeah.
And I didn't think the remorse was in this scene, but I thought later on when she finds Taskmaster in the prison and effectively risks her life, knowing Taskmaster could kill her, and risks her life to free Taskmaster from that prison, and release her. I thought that was the remorse scene, but this moment is all about taking down Dreykov.
Exactly. I think what took me out of all of that was then literally 10 minutes later at the end of the film, it's all sort of shake hands and happy clappy because Taskmaster has that same antidote. Yeah. And it felt like, in some ways, I understand why it was warm and fuzzy at the end, but it felt too warm and fuzzy with regards to what had potentially just happened and how how much of a start of the journey in reconciliation, say, with Dreykov's daughter, and the new bonds with her family, from the USA. But that, it's a minor quibble for me, but I, as I say, I just felt it maybe just needed to be dialed up. If you're gonna be Judy Garland, then be, big up and be Judy Garland. And I felt that it could have been pushed a bit more for me, in terms of the remorse, potentially the sadness. Because again, I think it linked back to Yelena saying you're on the cover of magazines, you think you're a good guy, you're part of the Avengers that also think they're good guys, but you're still a trained assassin. You're the person with the gun that young girls look up to, and that I felt it linked into that bigger thing. And for me, I'm not entirely sure, it quite spotted the landing, but I think that's just me.
I wonder how Mattel felt about that line in the movie, since they just commissioned 2 new Barbies based on the Black Widow movie coming out. Oh no, sugar! We've made this internationally trained assassin killer into a Barbie doll for girls to look up to. I think possibly one of the challenges is that we don't really ever hear the other side of the story, because Taskmaster, because his daughter has gone through so much damage and gone through all of this experimentation over the years. We never get a moment with her going, I hate being this weapon or this tool. There's also no other side to that conversation. We just put that expectation on her.
I think that's right.
We don't know how damaged she really is, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's right. There's nowhere for this remorse to go. You don't get the feedback on it effectively.
That's my only nitpick with this whole choice. It literally started to become telegraphed in that scene area, and I'm like, oh, okay, I figured it out. Cool. Like a couple of seconds before.
Just as he hits the mask to reveal who it is.
Yeah, it was just, well, no, it was just like, just a few minutes before, it was like, oh, okay, I figured out who this is now.
Yeah.
My only nitpick is we don't get that other side, that other aspect of the story. And that I felt would have been potentially one of the greatest parts of it, because then you get the full trauma caused by this overall piece. And the maybe it was being saved, or maybe it is being saved for a future iteration or a future scene or a future show, like The Widows on Disney Plus.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Taskmaster is one of the widows. Like, there's something there that I think it potentially is a good story. And I think that was the only missing thread.
Yeah.
Overall, I thought this was great.
Yeah.
Like, it's a good choice. It ties back into the origin. It's the mythos of the Black Widow and the widows and the whole shebang. It is well threaded through.
Yeah,
definitely. It was just that part of that story. Also, I will say though, one of the worst aspects of the Widow's security system is that the code to open the cell was 3 and 6. That was it. She pressed 3 and she pressed 6 and then the door opened. And I was like, hold on a second.
Yeah.
High security, and they just go, doop, doop, done.
But maybe that's how you make something even more secure. Just have it 1111, because nobody would use that, right?
The password for this top secret thing is password. What?
What's the joke in Hot Fuzz? The password for the safe in the police office is 999, which is the phone number for the emergency services. So that's the joke. Let's just close out our discussion about Black Widow. The fight here continues as expected, I suppose. There's one tiny thing that I didn't like in the overall fight, which is Alexei fighting against Taskmaster, a character that looks like she has the moves of Captain America built in. She's using the shield. And I just wanted Alexei to relive that moment where he steals the shield and uses it against Taskmaster, because that's what he says he's done, and is firmly adamant that he did that in a fight against Captain America. And I just felt, if you call that out in your script earlier on in the movie, have a moment where he does that, where he's the one that uses the shield, knocks her into the cell even, and then Melina shuts the cell. Because it feels like that was telegraphed in the writing, and it feels like then you could at least say that story is true, even though it wasn't Steve Rogers he fought. He's repeating something that he did in his history, and I thought that was a bit odd that they didn't do that, since they set up that they had the fight. You know?
Yeah. I thought the whole destruction of the Russian Shield helicarrier here was
privately owned,
was really, really good. I loved it. I loved the whole nonchalant Melina as she kind of basically takes out one of the engines and zip lines away. Mm-hmm. I think we see Natasha get all the data. She's, again, it's just that little sleight of hand where she's managed to take Dreykov's ring that he uses to sort of gain access to his system, take all that down. There's the face-off between Natasha and Taskmaster. I mean, it's a real ride all the way through, as this whole facility is breaking apart and blowing up, and I thought it was done really, really well. And the fighting through the air was just really, really good. There was elements. There was one moment where Natasha goes through the helicopter through the side. Straight through, which just reminded me of Falcon and the Winter Soldier from the first episode. She just doesn't do it quite as gracefully as the Falcon. I think she does hit the side. No, exactly. But I thought this was all. I thought this was really, really good.
Okay, yeah. I like that it starts with Yelena taking out Dreykov. He has to die at some point. She's the one that takes him out, and thinks she's going to sacrifice herself in it effectively, and then gets blown off the side of the privately owned helicarrier. But the fighting through the air, look, it looks great. It really does. I have no idea how both Taskmaster and Natasha survived this fall. At least Yelena has a parachute on. It seems high enough that the parachute would slow her descent. But Black Widow's jumping back and forth from pieces of very fast moving debris. And I think they get a parachute open about 10 feet from the ground. They would both have gone splat. But that can't happen, I know, in the movie. But you need to have the action take place a little higher in the air then, so that you can have a good amount of time for them to fall and slow their fall. But that is the most unbelievable bit in the movie, I think, that fight through the air. But it is fun, and there's lots of interesting stuff going on. But the jumping back and forth with no superpowers, between, pieces of, already falling debris while you're having a fight that's not going to slow your fall. You're going to die.
It was awesome, though. I
was.
have to say.
But Dreykov's men were very committed to this fight. The people that were fighting for him, they were falling out of the sky without parachutes, still shooting their weapons at their targets. Not like, I'm going to die.
But I guess they're still mind
They
controlled.
may be mind controlled, yes.
As well. So, because it was only when with the Black Widows that Dreykov calls in to take care of Natasha, that Yelena, who's now got the vials back, is able to do the old, release the antidote for them. And this was the other side of it that I actually really liked as well, because there's, just right at the end, there's the comment, as they've all landed, they're all back on terra firma, but that the Black Widows come back and it's not just the family unit of Alexei, Melina, Yelena, and Natasha, but then it becomes this whole because this has all been done to women, and that they, the other Black Widows come back. They want to bring Taskmaster back in, and also then with Yelena, Melina, and Alexei as well, all to kind of rectify these wrongs within that group, but also more the wider network of Black Widows that have been put out, throughout the world in this network of implanted Black Widows by Dreykov. So to really kind of pick apart his work, and I thought that was really, really good. I thought that was really fitting.
Yeah, and a great setup for the potential Disney Plus TV series.
Exactly. That's why I thought they may announce a Widow show. Where it is essentially Yelena, Taskmaster, Melina, David Harbour, and the rest of the characters going and pulling down the remaining of the Widow Red Room, and then finding out some additional. There's a blue room that they must now take down as well, where someone has set up the Red Room and is like a second in command, etc.
Yeah, because it was very much in this movie, it was all about Dreykov having full control of all of these women across the world from his datapad. With Dreykov dead, and these women still under control, what are they doing? They're in sleeper cells around the world waiting for somebody else to activate them, I guess. So I guess that's how you create your antagonist for whichever show this will appear in the future, or whatever movie it'll appear in the future. That's how you create the antagonist, is the next person to come in and take control over what he's left behind.
Could it be a certain countess maybe takes over?
Well, yes.
Who has questionable loyalties, because that is the end credit scene that we get. Before we'll get to that in a sec. Essentially, we get this sets up the Infinity War. This sets up straight at this end. We see the agent meeting Nat, who has now been given the vest, is in her outfit for Infinity War, and is essentially kind of given her Quinjet found on her bike, and then that's the perfect setup. She's gone to help some friends out, and as Derek said, she chose the right side, if there is such thing as a right side.
Yes, she's officially Team Cap, which is the right side.
Sure.
Finally, everybody ends off there in the end, so it's definitely the right side. But yes, that's a nice way to set it up. I also love the fact that it is General Ross coming down to take everybody out. All the widows get away, and Natasha's left alone after the big fight that she's been done, and then it just goes 2 weeks later, and she's completely free, knowing that she can get out of any situation. We don't need to see a replay of the moment at the beginning of the movie where she got away really easily. We know she gets away. So I love that they didn't play anything out at all. There's not even a conversation there. That was quite funny. But yes, into the post-credit scene, another setup for a possible future Valentina Allegra de la Fontaine, who we saw back in Captain America and the Winter Soldier, bringing on board John Walker to her team. We don't know much about the character at all. We just know that she's possibly nefarious, possibly on the good side. But here she's setting up Hawkeye with Yelena. She's saying that Hawkeye's the one that killed her sister. So this is taking place after Avengers Endgame, after the death of Natasha. Val is saying that it's Hawkeye that's responsible for the death of the Black Widow, and technically that's kinda true, because you're supposed to sacrifice the thing you love in order to get the Infinity Stone on that planet of Vormir. You have to sacrifice the thing you love, so technically Hawkeye did sacrifice her, even though she made the choice and he wanted to die in her stead. She technically didn't commit suicide because then he wouldn't have gotten the stone, right? That, I guess, is how the magic works, that protected the stone. But the fact that Val is sending Yelena out to take out Hawkeye means, she is on a more evil side or a more manipulative side, let's say.
Yeah, and we also find that Yelena's working for Val already. She needs a raise.
She's on holiday and not allowed for 2 minutes on her own.
So this is very much screaming to me an organization. So very much we think they are setting up the Thunderbolts. Yeah. Mm-hmm. This is what I'm starting to feel. Because again, this was supposed to have happened before we saw Val in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. In the alternate timeline, in the multiverse of the world, this would have come out before, if it wasn't for COVID.
Yeah.
So this would have set it up, and then we would have seen her again, and then this has led us now. So there very much is a Nick Fury-esque character who is essentially building a morally loose team of Avengers.
Yeah, and I think to John's point at the beginning of the podcast about Thunderbolt Ross himself, General Ross not being in the best of health, potentially Val has taken over that position. She will set up the Thunderbolts, and she will be the leader of them. The way in the comic books, General Ross was the leader of them. Potentially, that's also a little reference there that they have. But a really interesting tie. You know, we know that in the TV shows, they're setting up the Young Avengers as a team. There's lots and lots of characters that have been introduced across all of the TV shows so far, and lots more to be introduced who are all parts of the Young Avengers. And now we're also seeing things like Val bringing in a Captain America, bringing in a Widow to join her team. So potentially this is all setting up for our big battle in the future of the Young Avengers versus the Thunderbolts, potentially. That could be the way it goes in the future. Guys, any notes about the movie? Anything that we haven't talked about you'd like to talk about at the end of our discussion?
Very quickly, I did enjoy that the MCU have upgraded their disguise.
Okay. Where
previously it used to just be a cap and sunglasses, and then that would suddenly you blend in no matter what. Now, Nat puts on a hoodie, and suddenly she's disguised. And so that's fantastic. It's good to see we've upgraded. If she had gone cap and hoodie, she would have been invisible.
There you go.
Jokes aside, there's a lot of Easter eggs out there. I highly recommend some of our fellow defenders jump out to kind of like Nerdist and IGN. They have a list of some of the nice Easter eggs. The one I did personally, I saw and I really enjoyed was that in Melina's armory, you see her Iron Maiden masks. So just for any of our again, welcome to Chris's Corner. Very quickly, the character of Melina in the comic books is this character called Iron Maiden. And essentially she wore an iron mask and she was a adversary to Black Widow. Is good, bad, mostly bad. Kind of very much mercenary, but wore an iron mask. And it was kind of, think the character from G.I. Joe who just kind of had that faceplate in front of mask that's just kind of just flat. That's what she had. Yeah. Cobra Commander, yes. So that is what she had hanging up. She had two of them in the background of the armory. So I thought it was very nice. And that's kind of it from me.
Excellent. Any notes from anybody else?
No, not for me.
Excellent. Yeah, I think we've talked about that in full detail for the Black Widow. Chris, I know you have to get out here pretty soon. Let's go on to our final thoughts about Black Widow. Do you want to give your final thoughts first?
Yes. I absolutely love this. This was a fitting goodbye to Natasha Romanoff. It's a nice way to remember her, the joy we had with this character. Do I think it's the last we'll ever see of Scarlett Johansson? No, because Disney is Disney and they can basically bring a dump chunk of money back, and we can see Budapest, we can see her in a flashback, a lot of options. But no, I think this is definitely a cool thing. It was fun. Yeah, I like Yelena's character and I like the options that it has opened. for the future of the MCU. And as a film in itself, outside of that, it is a fun, futuristic spy, James Bond, Bourne type flick. It is a fun popcorn film, and it's a great way to reintroduce you to the cinema. So overall, I really defend this, and I really enjoyed it.
Excellent.
John, what about yourself? Do you defend?
I really do. I do defend Black Widow. I'd give it 4 tightly fitting super suits out of 5.
Nice.
I thought this was a really great action movie with this really nice kind of layered element of sort of the relationship between Natasha and her sister Yelena, the family, the forced family, that ultimately finds itself, in terms of that special time that they had in the USA, to the, breaking the control of Dreykov on the Black Widow program and how far he had taken it. And I think this is all really nicely, linked in. It has great kind of connections back to Winter Soldier and Civil War. It has really, I was wondering how they were going to do it, but those links into the future with, that post-credit scene around Hawkeye, but also the Thunderbolts, and what we're seeing develop now through the Marvel TV show. So I thought this was a really great send-off for Natasha. It's a shame it hadn't come a bit earlier and connected in sort of somewhere closer to Winter Soldier or Civil War. But nonetheless, it's out, and I think it really stands well alone. And you just get more for this character, and given the sacrifice on Vormir, then I thought this was a really good addition to the MCU for sure. And 4 tightly fitting super suits out of 5 from my side. Derek, do you defend Black Widow?
I definitely defend this movie. I really, really enjoyed it, but it does feel non-essential the way it's come out now. This is supposed to be the beginning of the next phase of movies, but I feel like it hasn't delivered enough in here that we're starting a new phase of Marvel. What it does do is put out a film that I'm definitely going to watch many times again. And I'm going to watch it after I watch Civil War, because I think it works perfectly in there. That's the perfect moment. You watch Civil War and you move on to your next movie. It's just such a shame that Ike Perlmutter was the runner of Marvel and Disney movies at the time. This movie was proposed so many times, and he said nobody wanted to watch a movie with a woman at the heart of it. We've seen the failure of Catwoman, which was used for 15 years, and it was just a badly written movie. It wasn't because there was a female protagonist in it, but it was used so many times to shut down these kinds of projects. I think this is a really good movie. It's just unfortunate. I think it's like, it hits us like a 3 out of 5 because of where it's landed now. A 3.5, maybe 4 out of 5. Because of where it's landed now. But if we got all this information ahead of Infinity War and Endgame for this character, it would have hit so much better. I think it would have landed so much better. But because we know this character's dead, it feels unessential now. That doesn't mean I don't recommend it. I highly recommend that everybody checks this out, and it's on Disney Plus, and they just need to reorder where it sits. It just doesn't sit as the 24th film in the MCU. It just sits a bit earlier. But I loved it. I love the performances. I mentioned I love Kate Shortland's direction and how she's taken her indie sensibilities into these characters, allowing them to have some breathing moments together where they can actually reiterate what's important about what's going on. The fundamental center of the story, the abuse of women, is something that comes out in so many interesting ways throughout the movie. There's a moment where Yelena says, I just was watching the news expecting Captain America would come in and save these women, but he never did, because that was never important enough to make the Avengers level list of threats in the world. The fact that Dreykov is saying, I'm using the most abundant resource in the world, women, because nobody really cares about them. All of this stuff underneath I think is really good and really effective. When you watch the movie multiple times, it comes out a bit more. But I loved it. I really thought it's a great send-off for Scarlett Johansson. Great job that she got her executive producer role on the movie. And I think it sets up a couple of other things that are really interesting to see in the future. Hopefully we'll see The Widows TV show or
my
the
God,
David
that
Harbour
was so
spin-off, which has been mooted already, of the Red Guardian. That kind of stuff, I think I'd like to see that in the future. This is a good setup for those possibilities in the future.
Agreed.
Excellent. Thanks so much, guys. That's the overall thoughts on Black Widow. Chris, thanks so much for joining us for this episode. We know you're on holiday this week and unfortunately couldn't do our other two podcasts, Loki and The Bad Batch, but thanks so much for joining us for the movie discussion about the Black Widow.
I managed to take this one, but don't worry, fear not, fellow defenders. I will be back next week for our finale of the Loki, and I will give my thoughts on episode 5 and for the next episode of Bad Batch, where I'll also give my thoughts on the previous episode before we jump into those reviews. Guys, this was so good to be here. Unfortunately, I have to go move parts of my house while on holiday, which is always fun, but I will definitely be watching this again. Look forward to you all soon. See you next week.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks,
See you
Chris.
soon.
I'm off to the Red Room.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Chris. We'll talk to you again next time. Let's get on to some feedback from our wonderful fellow defenders. First up, over on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV podcast industries, Ronaldo says, I'm very impressed with Black Widow. It had a lot of action. The first half was almost unrelenting, but to be honest, I found the interactions between Natasha and Yelena the most interesting. The reveal of Taskmaster was good, I guess. Hoping that we do get Tony Masters down the line. It's too good a character to throw away, i.e. Dreykov's daughter being cured now. I think Yelena is hilarious. The poser gag I just loved. And I was surprised to find the Red Guardian not too annoying. Melina was a badass too, and I hope we see her again. A cleaned up Red Guardian. He did come across as a bit of an oaf. Johansson rocked as a solid Black Widow, and I personally think she owns the role. I never knew Ray Winston was in this too, so that was an amazing surprise. I also like the play on that trope that you see in cinema of the female lead getting changed in the mirror. In this instance, Natasha has cuts and bruises that would make Matt Murdock blush. It's a good reminder that although she is an Avenger like Barton, she doesn't have the luxury of tech or powers, just honest skill and willpower. Thanks so much, Ray. Yes, Tony Masters is Taskmaster in the comic books. So that's the comic book version of the character. But as we said during our discussions, do like this version of Taskmaster for this movie. And I think the technology could be used in future to bring in another Taskmaster if that's what they want to do.
Yeah.
The character, as we mentioned.
Definitely.
If we have like a Widow's show where Taskmaster, this version, becomes part of that team, potentially they can have another Taskmaster, Tony Masters versus her. Maybe that's a way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the only thing missing from this Taskmaster was something after she had the antidote. And I think that we discussed that about just linking into Natasha's remorse of, when taking out Draco, she also took effectively an innocent bystander in his daughter, and destroyed her life. I think there was a little bit more required there for sure, but I think Taskmaster was really good in this movie, and I think worked well. I don't know enough about the character for about whether we get Tony Masters or whether this is just kind of, we've had Taskmaster and certainly we may not see one again. But again, if we're talking of Hawkeye, Thunderbolts, all this, we see Yelena, there's certainly a good chance that will happen. And I think, like yourself, I think the interactions between Natasha and Yelena were really, really good, and completely agree in, Scarlett Johansson is absolutely Natasha Romanoff here.
So good. So good.
For sure. Yeah. Thanks so much, Ronaldo. Cale Hensley says, I like the movie overall. Underwhelmed with Taskmaster. Hopefully we see more from this. I think there is certainly the potential to see more from Taskmaster. And I think, again, Taskmaster, at least from my perspective, I enjoyed, I thought they were good in this movie. I think there's just a few extra tweaks required, for sure, in this movie.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Cap.
Yeah, thanks, Cale. Brandy Elise Anderson says, I love the actions and fights, but my favourite part was the interaction between Natasha and Yelena. Yelena making fun of the Black Widow pose was amazing. Between that, her obsession with her vest, and her classifications on fun ways to die, she was effortlessly hilarious. Yeah, definitely.
The vest has lots of pockets.
I think that's a perfect way of describing it. There was an effortlessness to her comedic timing, and what she was saying was really good. Brandy continues, I saw it with my own sister, who is also my roommate. My sister turns to me during the fight scene between Natasha and Yelena and says, "That's how I'm coming in the house from now on. This is your only warning. Don't get caught slipping." So having a smart-ass younger sister of my own, I totally understand Natasha's character. Absolutely.
Very good, very good. It'll be like in Pink Panther, who's the
Inspector Clouseau and his...
Kato.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Ray Felix says, I was a little disappointed that the gender-bended Taskmaster, they probably did it so that they don't have to pay the creator royalties. Yeah, I mean, I think so. There's certainly a theme here about Taskmaster, and for me, I think Taskmaster worked in this movie.
Yeah.
I think
I don't think the creators actually get royalties.
No, I think it's way too wound up in Marvel contractual stuff that it will be owned by Marvel.
Yeah, I think I've heard a lot of comic book creators kind of saying, you know, they obviously own their own characters that they create outside of the Marvel universe, but once you create something in Marvel, it's owned within Marvel, and Taskmaster's been written multiple times by multiple different writers, so I don't think that would be a consideration. I think they did it because the movie has a main female protagonist, and the person who's going up against it makes sense to have a female antagonist,
exactly.
For a female protagonist.
Exactly. Thanks, Ray.
Thanks, Ray. Yeah. Sandy Resendez says, I'm not sure how I felt about this movie. I found myself not really caring about it. Maybe I'd feel differently had it come out last year. I did like Yelena a lot and loved the end credits scene. I also liked the family dynamic. Natasha falling out of the sky and being fine was just silly in my opinion. Again, I just found myself not caring about it, and I even looked at my watch a couple of times during it. Could just be a me problem. Thanks, Sandy. Yeah, I don't know whether it would have been better if it came out last year or not. I do feel that the as I say, it feels inessential at this stage, but on a rewatch, I think it'll work really well just after Civil War.
Yeah, I think so. I think, you know, there's certain aspects where if this had come out earlier, I think elements of dialogue from, say, Endgame and Infinity War, it just would have resonated more with Natasha Romanoff saying it. You know, this idea of, you know, she was lost without the Avengers, and trying to piece back this group together to get a purpose. And certainly if her family had been blipped, then this, you know, I just feel it's a movie, like you say, it's non-essential. It's out of time, it's out of step, and I think luckily you can watch it within step, and it probably will now add that resonance to Natasha in Endgame a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Andy. Brittany Ehrman says, I was bothered by the fact that they introduced this family of hers, but then in Endgame, they make a big deal out of her not getting family and the Avengers being her only family. She even had a friend in this movie, that gentleman who brought her supplies. I didn't catch his name. I did really like Yelena. She was the standout of this movie for sure. Thanks, Brittany. Yeah, I think in the credits of the movie, O.T. Fagbene's character is just called the Agent. He doesn't have a name in the movie. In the comic books, I think he is Rick Mason, a former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, and that makes sense in the Marvel universe, being that S.H.I.E.L.D. has fallen apart. We actually see S.H.I.E.L.D. vehicles at the beginning of the movie. Melina calls out that the facility that they were working in was a Hydra facility, so they are connected in the background, and it would make sense for this agent character to be a former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, you know, having his connections and using those to make money effectively. He is a friend to her in the movie. I do like that, you know, that he has got a friendship with Natasha, and she does have some other connection outside. And we were thinking about this, Brittany, this idea of her not having a family and being stressed so much in Endgame. And I do wonder, if this movie had come out beforehand, would you have had a scene where we see this family, Yelena and Alexei and Melina, being blipped, maybe?
Yeah, exactly.
And then the character may have had even more resonance, the idea that she's lost her family in the blip, and the only family she has left are the Avengers. Something that you couldn't have addressed because this movie didn't come out beforehand and wasn't written before Endgame. But it might have added a little extra depth to know that she did have this grouping that she called family by the end of this movie, and lost them in the blip, and then her only family left is the Avengers. Maybe that would have been a way to make it better in the movie, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think, you know, moving forward with the end credit scene, the fact that, like you say, Yelena was so good here, and that character certainly is being threaded into the future output, whether it's on TV or in the movies. I think is really good. There's this idea of whether, if this had come out a year earlier, that end credit scene feeding into Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but I think it works either way as well, to be honest. Thanks, Brittany, for the feedback. Mark Kirkman says, I loved it. So many scenes that are fortuitous within the movie at the beginning with Natasha watching Moonraker. We know where the vest comes from. The family dynamic within it was amazing. They were and are family. I loved David Harbour. I understand now why they have delayed the release due to Disney Plus content and how it influences the MCU. Great movie. I was entertained and it hit all the feels for me. I think so. I think it really is a solid, good movie, for sure. And, it's interesting, isn't it? Because in many respects, it does feel like a self-contained story because of when and how it's come out. And just because it had such a long gestation period for various different reasons. But it's very much unique in that sense, in that whilst it does link to the future, the central storyline doesn't really need to. There doesn't need to be Dreykov surviving. There doesn't need to be any of that kind of signposting. And yet, you've still got his daughter. Maybe she doesn't rehabilitate in the way that we think she will. So, there's plenty that they could draw on to continue here as well. So, definitely, as well, David Harbour, really, really good. A character, the Red Guardian, I just thought he brought that to life, for me. Yeah. I loved it.
Yeah.
We were saying, we're covering the Bad Batch at the moment. He's like Wrecker, in the Bad Batch, to some extent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks so much, Mark. One thing that just kind of popped up in my head, as we've been going through feedback and going through the podcast, and I'm not sure whether it came out in the movie or not. Natasha Romanoff is Black Widow, right? And everybody else in the movie is just referred to as widows. They're just widows. They don't have a title. Like, I don't know why I was kind of expecting coming into the movie that we'd have, like, the Power Rangers, we'd have, like, a purple widow, and we'd have a white widow. you know what I mean? As the movies kind of went on, like, I know, Natasha puts on the white costume, but doesn't change her name to White Widow. It's just because she's now an internationally renowned member of the Avengers. So I presume there's not millions of other women around the world called Black Widow, right?
That's true.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just wonder, is it a title? Is Black Widow a title that somebody that she's attained or something like that? I don't know why it just popped into my head as to why it wasn't filled out in this movie, because this is a kind of an origin story and a solo story. So I wondered, had she attained Black Widow, the best of the best, and other widows were at a lower level or something. But anyway, it just popped into my head there. Thanks again, Mark. Samuel Cox has a feedback on the movie for us as well. He says, hey guys, this is my instant reaction right from the movie screen to Black Widow. So apologies if I've skimmed over a few things, just collecting my overall thoughts. First of all, cinemas have been open here in South Korea the whole time in COVID times. So I haven't had the cinema withdrawals too much, but I have missed the Marvel movie feel, and it's definitely back with this entry. I will do some specific thoughts on the characters individually, then a quick overall after it. Makes it easier for me to remember. Natasha first says, great to finally get some backstory and really flesh out this character who's been a pillar of the MCU for 11 years now. The movie also shows how ruthless Natasha is and skilled. Killing a child, well, at least thinking she did. Elena, Florence Pugh is by far the standout from this movie for me. What a great addition to the MCU. I'm hoping to see a lot more of her in the future, and with regards to the post-credit scene, it's basically confirmed we will. Her fight scenes felt a lot more grounded compared to Natasha's. Apart from their clash, Elena felt like they had real impact. I don't know if it was just due to Scarlett not being able to do a lot of the stunts or just a creative choice, but for me, Natasha was more of a ragdoll than a fighter in this movie. Bit of a shame. Red Guardian, David Harbour brought a great balance of comedic relief and heart to this character. I'm not well versed on his arc in the comics, so I don't know the personality, but for me it worked. Also curious to find out who the Captain America he fought in the 80s was, because he definitely fought someone. Could it be another experiment like Isaiah? Maybe the Winter Soldier? Or it could just truly be a lie he now believes himself, or of the great battle between Red Guardian and Captain America. Melina? Rachel Weisz is a great actor, but overall I wasn't the biggest fan of Melina, but I felt she has a natural way to show the scale of an evil nature of the Red Room. Taskmaster. Now this one is a big one for me. Honestly, I'm heartbroken by the treatment of this character. They showed the prowess of the character, but he, or should I say she, lacked all personality and feel of the original character. Another mishandled character in the MCU. I have no problem with the gender swap, but to completely strip the character of the things that made him fun and a genuine force in the comics, it really got to me. They best fix this with some multiverse shenanigans, or even just put someone else in the suit. Maybe we could get Tony Masters or another variation of the character, which I think they may be setting up with how it was all technology based and not just pure skill. Again, I understand why they did it and it fit the story well, I guess, but I just wanted to say #not my Taskmaster. Overall, super happy the MCU is back in the movies, and it was great and fun to watch. As I previously stated, a few of the fight scenes took me out of it with how rubber like the CGI was. I don't know what they could have done differently, but I didn't like it. Also, Natasha being able to fall from buildings and hit everything on the way down and throw it around only to have a few bruises, which was a great highlight of the movie for me, showing that she isn't indestructible, but also felt a little contradictory due to what we had just seen. It felt more like John Wick to me than the usually genuinely great and grounded action of a character without powers. However, all that being said, Black Widow is an overall good addition to the MCU without affecting the main stories. It still was able to have a nice connected feel. P.S. That end credit scene, Val is back at it. Fabulous. Seeing as this movie was supposed to come out before Falcon the Winter Soldier, do you think it would have made more sense the other way around with the introduction of our character? For me, I think this worked a treat and had me smiling. Julia Louis-Dreyfus is made for this role, knocking it out of the park. Regarding the contents of this scene, is this setting up Florence Pugh to be the main villain of the Hawkeye series? If not, she has to be a vital part of the story, right? Anyway, I haven't covered the Easter eggs and stuff we spotted, of which I'm sure you guys will, so I'll just wrap up by saying it's a solid entry, but nowhere near the best. I'd like to ask you guys, where do you think this ranks in MCU solo outings? Thank you, Samuel. No, thank you, Samuel. That's really good thoughts, really interesting, in-depth thoughts about the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to your point around Natasha falling from the buildings and hitting everything on the way down. Yeah, I mean, again, the other girl dies. I mean, she killed herself, but you saw her lying on the ground, severely hurt, unable to move, with the leg twisted.
Yeah.
And what happened to Natasha? You definitely felt it was a broken shoulder, a broken leg, as she went through and fell down, hitting everything. I mean, literally everything on the way down.
Yeah.
I think as well to her falling through the sky, fighting Taskmaster again. Yeah. It's like you mentioned, Derek. It seemed a little incredulous. I actually, just to counter that, I loved the very deadpan, that piece of dialogue from Melina as she is hobbling. She's been supported by Alexia, and she goes, "I'm clearly injured," after being asked, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
And I wonder whether that was a little bit of a dig at itself, maybe. But I love that delivery from Rachel Weisz on that. It really made me chuckle, and I think she felt the most detached in the movie, and I think that's probably her character more.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately I thought she was good in this. For me, I'm definitely in complete agreement with you around David Harbour and what he brought to the Red Guardian. And Yelena, I thought it was really good. I think on Taskmaster, I think that's it. It's, I don't know the character, and so this idea of the nuance of his character that maybe has been brought out in the comics with Tony Masters, and that it's pure skill rather than technology. I mean, I think the MCU anyway, up until the introduction of Doctor Strange and magic, and I guess maybe were certainly a big portion of the MCU is going now, was very tech-based.
In the past,
so it makes sense that this would be tech-based for me. I haven't really thought about where this ranks in the MCU solo outings, to be honest. I think it's more in the timeline of the MCU and where it should be placed, I think. And I think it is much closer to the Winter Soldier Civil War arc. Should have almost followed Civil War, to be honest, which was awesome. And I think, with Zemo's reasons in Civil War, which were really powerful, and then this coming out, which is effectively, this is a really kind of big movie because the big characters are women, and I think that includes Taskmaster, and I think it would have been placed there. In terms of where it ranks, I'm really I just haven't thought about it, but let me just say it certainly ranks above Iron Man 2.
Yeah, her first introduction was not a great introduction to the character. She was not well treated on screen there. I think each of us have our different favourite solo characters in the Marvel Universe. Chris is a massive Spider-Man fan. John, as everybody knows, is a Doctor Strange fan. And I come at it as a Nick Fury and Captain America fan, much more a fan of those, the spy movies and those, and what they've done, in the MCU with those characters. So for me, it's quite high. I would say, of the solo movies, I'd say definitely, top 5, top 6, of those movies. I think they did a really good job, and I think it's added so much to the character of Natasha that I just wish we'd had it before the character is gone in Endgame. I've liked her. She's been a fun character with her own storyline going on in those big movies, but having this expand her out to be really likable and enjoyable on screen, and then knowing that we're not going to get Natasha Romanoff back in the future is unfortunate. But yeah, overall, I think it's very high up there for me. Thanks so much, Samuel.
Yeah, thanks so much, Samuel. Alex Baelish said, wow, that was such a high impact action movie. They really did not hold back any money on effects. Every fight or action scene was better than the next. Yelena stole the show in my eyes. I love how she gives Natasha crap about posing. Once again, Disney Marvel has tied in every show and made them so relevant. I loved the post-credit scene. Yeah, absolutely. I think the post-credit scene is what links it in ultimately, as well as every sort of that shared remembrance of what happens to Natasha from Winter Soldier, Civil War through to Endgame. And I think it's almost this unconscious fitting elements in. And I think that, I think that's what's really good about this movie. And at the same time, I think someone can look at it purely as a standalone as well. Very much in this, the same vein as some of the other MCU movies, I guess. So this, I think, I think it certainly had the action sensibilities. I mean, a bit like, as Ray mentioned previously, it was full on for sure. I definitely got that as well. So, but I did really, really like it.
Absolutely. What an exciting way to get back to the MCU. Thanks so much, Alex. We have a piece of voicemail feedback in from Steve Brown with his thoughts about Black Widow.
Hey guys, it's Steve, and I just walked out of Black Widow, and wow, I don't know if it's just because it's the first movie I've seen, since the pandemic, but I loved it. I loved the mix of humor and drama, and the actress who played Scarlett Jo's sister was outstanding. All of it. I loved Rachel Weisz. David Harbour with his dad bod, but moving like a super soldier was really incredible. And I don't want to give anything away. There is an end credit scene, and it's really good. It's setting up probably for something, I'm sure. Anyway, yeah, I loved it. I can't wait to hear you guys talk about it. I hope I get this in before you record. If not, no worries. Talk to you later.
Thanks so much, Steve. I could tell the excitement sitting in the car park after watching a movie in the cinema as well. I felt exactly the same coming out of the cinema. Really enjoyed that experience again because we've just missed it for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
But glad things are getting a bit safer for us to be able to get back into cinemas.
Yeah, and I think that hits the nail on the head as well, Steve, what you said. It is David Harbour's dad bod as a superhero.
Yeah.
As I say, to me, him squeezing into the Red Guardian outfit was sheer class. Absolutely loved it. I think, we need to see more of these chiseled abs and frames that have been so prevalent in the MCU. They need to exhale and relax and see them in a more sort of dad bod state.
Yeah,
the trials and tribulations of trying to squeeze into that outfit before they go off on a mission. I mean, almost like old Captain America that, he would actually need someone to help him put on his suit again before he did one last mission.
Yes, but don't take away my Marvel abs, John. I'd like both in the Marvel Cinematic
That
Universe.
is true.
Give me some dad bods, give me some Marvel abs as well.
Definitely. Thanks so much, Steve.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, everybody else, for your feedback on Black Widow, the first MCU movie we've covered in 2 years.
Yeah.
Which is incredible to think. And we've got so much more MCU movies to come this year. We've got The Eternals. We've got Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. We've got Spider-Man coming up at Christmas as well, the fourth Spider-Man movie. Lots and lots of stuff. And don't forget, over on the TV side, which we are covering, we're finishing up Loki next week, the 6th episode and the finale of Loki coming up next week. Following that, we've got What If, which looks fascinating. The animated stories of alternate versions of things that happened in the MCU. That's going to be a lot of fun. Starting out with Captain Carter, Agent Carter taking on the mantle of Captain America. That's
exactly. And of course, we have the potential to be seeing Yelena back on our small screens in the Hawkeye TV series as well later this year. So it is jam-packed, filled with MCU content for the Defenders podcast on TV Podcast Industries.
And one more that you almost forgot there. Earlier this year, we were introduced to one of the Marvels. We got Monica Rambeau in WandaVision. We're going to see Miss Marvel coming up in her own TV show, introduction of Miss Marvel to the MCU. And they will join together in the future in another future MCU movie, Marvels, where they join up with Captain Marvel. So lots and lots of connected universe stuff going on in the MCU. And we've also got loads of other shows that we'll be covering. We're still covering Star Wars The Bad Batch on episode 11. So another 5 weeks of that show as well. So, which has been great fun. So lots and lots of stuff coming up on TV Podcast Industries. We hope you enjoyed our coverage of Black Widow. We'd love if you'd stay with us for our future coverage of the TV shows and of all the other movies that we'll be covering. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast at tvpodcastindustries.com or just search TV Podcast Industries on any Black or White Widow supporting podcast.
Yes,
catchers.
exactly.
There you go.
Yes, and of course, once you've subscribed, please share the podcast, because sharing the podcast is sharing the love. And you can also support us in many other ways as well. We're over on patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries, and we're also on buymeacoffee.com/TVPI. Any support is really, really appreciated. We're very grateful here, the three Defenders on TV Podcast Industries. So thanks so much, fellow Defenders, for your support.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We'll be back later this week on TVPI with the finale of Loki and to discuss Star Wars The Bad Batch episode 12.
Yeah, thanks so much, fellow Defenders, for joining us. It is great to be discussing MCU movies with you again. Remember, we'll be back soon, but keep watching, keep listening, and keep defending.
Absolutely. Have to say, to close this out, Black Widow's family is much better than the family in Fast 9, aren't they?
Definitely.
Yeah. So many memes about that family. I wonder will they combine those two in the future.
That would be awesome.
Speak to you soon. Bye.
Bye. It's a minor quibble for me, but I as I say, I just felt it maybe just needed to be dialed up. You know, if you're going to do Judy Garland, then do Julie Garland and make it big, I guess.
Could you just give me that one more time? Because I said Judy Garland and then
Julie.
You're going to be Judy Garland to be Julie Garland. I think they did a really good job, and I think it's added so much to the character of Scarlet Witch, who sometimes... Who the fuck is Scarlet Witch?